I want to see this thing that's going to be blazing through our solar system, and we will probably never, ever again see. And that sounds like such a cool target to me. You know, we image things like deep sky nebula and planets, and those things, they may change sort of from year to year sometimes, like planets do, but they're generally always there. This is going to be one of those things that will never be there again. So let's do a non-panic version of a 3i Atlas video. And let's try and do something cool. Let's try and take a video of it. And when I say video, what I mean is a series of like 30-second exposures that are stacked together, something like what I achieved with Comet A6 Lemmon, which is another visitor to the inner solar system in this shot here. So for this video, I want to take a picture of 3i Atlas Part 1. So welcome to Deep Sky Lab, where I embrace being a beginner and learning in public. In this I Want To episode, I want to take a picture of a comet, but my goal isn't just to take a single pretty still. My goal is to create a smooth animation with the nucleus sliding and potentially even the tail breathing, because comets, like very few other things, are really almost alive in the way that they change from second to second. So let's talk about what it is that we're gonna cover here. There's a couple of things that you want to take these pictures to end up doing. Number one, you could want to create a motion clip, which is like a GIF or an MP4 or an AVI file, which is built from tiny stacks so that the comet continues to look crisp and alive. And number two, if you want to, you can create what's called a blended still, where you take a stack of all the pictures, you align them by the stars in the pictures, and you pull the most detail out of the stars and out of space as possible. And then you create another stack of images that are centered on the comet, and you use that to really try and get the most sort of brightness and color out of the comet as you can. And then you sort of overlay those two in something like Photoshop or GIMP. So the reason that you want to take these different approaches and not just take one super long exposure is that if any single sub exposure is too long, the nucleus sort of starts melting. And for wanting to take an image of it that's like an hour long, that would look awful. Either you track the comet and the stars are all streaky, or you track the stars and the comet melts in the shot. So I personally have tried using these really short sub exposures and then just taking a lot of them and then stacking them in, like I said, these small groups. This is not a technique that I developed. I actually found it from a couple conversations I was having in the Discord channel of Astro World TV, which is where I usually hang out, and then looking at Cyril's comet stacking guide, which is what I used to create this video here. So like in the last I Want To video, we're going to talk about the specifics of what comets are, any unique challenges that trying to take a picture of that brings, and what sort of equipment you would generally use to try and capture something like that. So comets are rocks or chunks of ice and gas and rock that are floating through space. And what gives them that tail, what makes them turn into that sort of comet-like tail, is as they get closer to the sun, the radiation from the sun starts heating up the surface, or as it's passing through like stellar winds, it creates friction, either way, and material starts coming off of it. And that's why the tail of the comet is always facing away from the sun. As far as what specific challenges there are, most comets are extremely dim. That's one issue. They can get bright. I think A6 Lemmon got up to like magnitude, I want to say like 6, 5. With magnitude, the lower the number, the brighter it is. And so, but generally they're really, really dim objects. And especially if you're trying to capture the faint details within the tail, they're extremely dim. So that's one specific challenge. The other challenge is they don't move with the rest of the night sky. The stars, from our perspective, are moving in a very specific way, which is called sidereal or sidereal. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I've only ever read it, which is like on a telescope mount. It's one of the modes. You can set it to sidereal. You can also set it to lunar because the moon moves in its own way. But there isn't one for comet because each comet moves a little bit differently. So its movement is another thing that makes it tricky. A third thing that makes it tricky is they're generally brightest when they're closest to the sun. The problem is they're usually, that's between us and the sun. And so if you think about where it's going to be when it's close to the sun, it's going to be in the night, in the sky, coming up or setting immediately before or after the sun does. And so the rest of the sky is potentially really bright. And so that's another challenge. It's either getting bright because you're trying to do it in the morning, or by the time it gets dark enough in the evening for you to start imaging it, it's so low in the horizon, which leads us to the next challenge. They're usually extremely low on the horizon. So you've got to get really good views out, generally east or west. If you're trying to capture it in the morning, it's east. If you're trying to capture it in the evening, it's west. And so you've got to have really good views down onto the horizon of each of those cardinal directions to be able to get a meaningful amount of time on the target. So the typical equipment that you would use, here's what I used. I used a RedCat 51, which is only, I think, f4.9, so it's not a super fast telescope, but it has a 250 millimeter focal length. So it provides you with a really nice wide view because I wanted to try for A6 Lemmon, try and capture as much of the tail as possible. And you can see here, these are almost uncropped shots. And the tail, even in these shots, is like almost extending out of the frame. So they're really big and they're really dim and they move weird. So it's a really unique set of challenges. I think the reason that this is part one is in this we're going to cover the 4 attempts that I used for practice when I was trying to capture Comet A6 Lemmon. And we'll talk about those in a minute. And then part 2 is going to be me actually trying to capture 3i Atlas, which is the interstellar object that everyone's been going crazy about. So let's talk about those 4 attempts that I've tried. So here's a quick montage of attempt 1. This is the first time I ever tried imaging a comet. I found a park that I thought had a clear view in the direction that I needed. I took my RedCat 51 with a 2600MC Duo, no filters, an AZ-GTi mount on a really small carbon fiber tripod. And I also took my Celestron DX5, which is a 5-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain, with a reducer on there to try and see if I could view it visually. All right, these are notes from Sunday the 19th. It's 6:17 in the morning. The sun's about to come out. I don't know if this will make it in a video. Probably not. This is more for me. The 2600MC Duo on the RedCat needs more than just the filter drawer to add as backspacing to reach back focus. I thought I remembered it being just camera, filter drawer, and then the lens, but it wouldn't get back focus. And that was super frustrating. And that happened right after I had unloaded all the gear. I can test that tonight under the stars before I come back out tomorrow morning. So that's lesson learned. Make sure your gear will reach focus before you go out, before you pack it up. Lesson 2, it wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be. It's 52 degrees, which I know for some parts of the world, 52 Fahrenheit, it's not that cold, but in Southern California, it's pretty cold. So I've got my thermal, little puffy jacket and my Haleakala National Park toque. So I was really worried about the cold, but it wasn't uncomfortable at all. I used a 55 millimeter eyepiece on the Celestron DX5, essentially, which is a 5-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain, and I could make it out. I think I'm gonna try again tomorrow because I think we can do this. I just need the camera to be able to reach focus. We'll try again. Attempt 2, I went to the same park. I made sure that my spacing was correct on the scope, and I was able to get about 8 30-second exposures, but the trees really blocked that early dark window, and so the sky brightened before I got anything super useful. The frames were fine, just not enough for the animation that I wanted to do, and honestly at this point I felt I felt beaten. I was like, okay, I just don't know that imaging comets is going to be something that I can do just with the restrictions of where I am and things like that. All right, here's some notes from night 2. Moving the telescope from one spot on this park bench to another spot on the park bench about 2 feet away is what got me the ability to sort of see just past the bush where A6 Lemmon was hiding behind. So if I'm gonna come again tomorrow morning, I have to be sort of on one very specific side of this table, because if you're on the other side of this table, you can't see anything. It's really hard to get comets because the sun starts coming up right as it comes above the horizon for at least today, which was October 20th. Everything worked well this time. I was able to get focus, polar alignment, all that stuff. But as soon as I was able to start actually seeing it and imaging it, you could just see the histogram do weird things. Weird for me. I've never tried doing a comet before, so it was kind of crazy to try and fight the sky essentially as the sky was getting brighter. So it's now 6:21. I think the sun comes up at 6:40, but the sky's already so bright. I don't know how anyone captures anything. So I just tore everything down. Luckily, the setup's really fast to sort of put up and break down. I don't think there's a better spot I could be. There's these mountains that are to the northeast of the town that I'm in, and I can basically see it just as it's coming up above those mountains. So there's literally nowhere else in town I could go to get a better view than this. It's kind of fun though, but it also is very different in this park. I think it's like attached to there's like a school up there during on a Monday morning versus a Sunday morning. At like 5 a.m. when I got here, there were already cars rolling in, and it was so annoying just getting blasted by headlights. But that's on me. I chose this spot. They're here to do, work or whatever, so I can't get mad at them. But that's definitely something to take into consideration for future sort of things like this. Because yeah, people, some of these people are trying to get to work at 5 in the morning, which good for them, but it sucks for me because I got blinded like 3 times. So yeah, I think the setup, like all the hardware, is where it needs to be. I think I just need to, try and, I don't know, maybe get it set up all a little bit. But literally, I was just sitting there waiting for it to come up above the horizon. So not much I could have done. Anyways, that was a good time. So then we got to attempt 3. Now, by this point, A6 Lemmon was visible in the evening as well. And this was a big thing for me. Staying up a little bit later is a lot easier than getting up early, but I know I can do it. So for attempt 3, I threw into ChatGPT and I was like, hey, is there any good locations near me where I can image this comet? And it gave me this park. And this park was up on top of a mountain, essentially. And it actually would be a great location. Super clear view of the northwest, which is what I needed to image this comet in the evening. I got there, I took one of the kids with me, and he took the Seestar so that he could try and capture it as well. I took the same RedCat on the AZ-GTi. We got everything set up, and right as the sun was setting, we got everything aligned. I was able to capture a couple images before the park ranger came and shut us down. Turns out that this park closes at sunset. So we got a great memory out of it, going up there and setting everything up, but it was a bad plan. And I sort of made me realize that, especially for stuff like that, I can't just rely on what the internet says. I should have checked when I got there that the park would be open. So that was failed attempt number 3, although I was starting to gather a couple of images here and there. With my confidence bolstered that it was something that I could do, I planned a 4th attempt. This time I went to a place that I knew would be open 24 hours a day, which was the beach. I'm in Southern California right now, and I knew that the beach is open super late. If there even is a closing time, I'm not sure. So I went with my fiance, and she took the Seestar. She had never used it before, so I had her install the app, and we went out there. And here's some footage of getting all that stuff set up. And again, I took the RedCat with the 2600MC Duo on the AZ-GTi. I took a longer tripod this time because I wasn't really sure where I was going to set up. I was able to take over 100 30-second exposures, and I then processed those using a mini stacking technique or super stacking, where I took 3 images. So if you line up from left to right, let's say all of the shots you took, and you take them in groups of 3 and you create one stacked exposure. And so you slide that window over, you take the next. There's a really good script that'll do a lot of that for you. You're able to create something like this, a really buttery smooth animation, which was exactly the vibe that I was going for. So let's talk about the recipe for 3i Atlas. In about a week or so from when this video goes live, I'm going to attempt to capture 3i Atlas. I found a location, I've scouted it out. My workflow is going to be, pretty straightforward. I'm going to do short subs again. I'm going to try and make those same 3 mini stacks with that overlap. I'm not going to do, I don't think I'm going to do any dithering, and I will do a focus check, every maybe 15 to 20 images, and I will grab flats before I tear down, because I'm going to try and shoot this in the morning. So I'll try and image the Comet 3i Atlas as it comes up. As soon as it gets too bright to image, I'll wait a little bit of time, and then I'll shoot sky flats just with the exact same setup. Now, I am taking the RedCat 51, but I am also going to take the HyperStar on the Celestron C8. This should get me a really nice wide field of view because it's the HyperStar. I think it's 391 millimeters of focal length, and it's giving me 8 inches of aperture, which should make everything super bright. I don't know if that's gonna make things worse for me with like the sky glow and stuff like that, but I want to try it. I'm also gonna take, like I said, the RedCat, and we're gonna see if that gets me where I need to go, because I already know how to use that and I know it'll work. So we're gonna go for an animation first approach to 3i Atlas. If you've ever imaged a comet, or if you've ever taken comet images and put them to like motion like that, I'm interested to know, what mini stack size did you use? What frames per second worked the best for you? What was the scope you used? What were your exposure times? Were you shooting in the evening or in the morning? I am really trying to get tips that I can use in the next week or so before I go out to try and capture 3i Atlas myself. And then I'll put all of that together into a part 2 video, and we'll talk about how that went. So if this helped or even made you just want to try, drop your settings down in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe. Part 2 of the 3i Atlas attempt featuring the RedCat 51 and a HyperStar C8 will be coming out in probably about 2 weeks, because it'll take me about a week to gather all the images and about another week to do the editing. Subscribe if you want to see if I nail it or if it's a complete fiasco and my telescope ends up falling off of a mountain. And if you want to feel more field tests like this, there's a buy me a coffee link in the description below. For Deep Sky Labs, I'm Francisco. Clear skies, and thanks for watching.